You're not surrounded by NPCs. You're surrounded by something far more unsettling. People who have forgotten their players. The distinction matters more than you realize, and I need you to understand why before we go any further. An NPC is programmed to never be conscious. That's its function. That's its design. It exists to populate the world, to create the illusion of fullness, to give you something to interact with while you make your actual choices. But a player who's gone dormant? That's a tragedy, written in real time, playing out in every conversation that feels scripted, every interaction that loops back to the same tired dialogue tree, every moment where you're speaking to someone who seems absent. You've felt it. That uncanny sensation when someone's eyes glaze over mid-conversation, when they pivot to a pre-loaded response that has nothing to do with what you just said, when they defend positions they've never examined with a passion that seems borrowed from somewhere else, when they repeat phrases they've never questioned, react with emotions that don't match the moment, become hostile to ideas they've never actually encountered. It's like watching someone perform a script they don't know they're reading. The ancient Gnostics called them the Hylics, humans trapped in matter, spiritually asleep, unable to perceive beyond the material prison. They weren't being cruel, they were being diagnostic. They understood that consciousness exists on a spectrum, and that most people never activate beyond the baseline programming. Modern psychology has a term for the same phenomenon: low need for cognition. It's a measured personality trait, indicating someone's tendency to avoid effortful thinking. But that's just a sterile, academic way of describing what you already know in your gut. Some people are running on autopilot, and they prefer it that way. Here's what nobody tells you. What makes this entire thing so much more complex than the NPC meme suggests. The difference between you and them isn't intelligence. It's not awareness. It's not even consciousness itself. It's willingness. The willingness to question the script. The willingness to examine the program. The willingness to stay present when every instinct screams at you to zone out, to go numb, to let someone else do the thinking. And once you see the 7 signs, you can't unsee them. Your entire social reality reorganizes around this recognition. You'll start categorizing people instantly: player or dormant, awake or asleep, questioning or repeating. But more importantly, you'll understand why you've been seeing them, why these patterns have been showing up with increasing frequency, why the world feels more scripted every year, more algorithmic, more predictable, more empty. Because the system needs NPCs. Or more accurately, it needs dormant players. It needs people who will accept the narrative without testing it, consume the content without questioning it, repeat the script without writing their own lines. And it especially needs you to never ever realize which one you've been. That's the real game. Not preventing you from waking up, that's impossible. But convincing you that you already are awake, so you stop trying. The Stanford Research Institute buried something in 1978. Not physically, nothing so dramatic. Bureaucratically, administratively. Filed under classifications that ensure nobody goes looking. A study on what they called compliance topology revealed that roughly 73% of test subjects defaulted to externally programmed behavioral loops when presented with contradictory information. They didn't question. They didn't investigate. They didn't pause to reconcile the cognitive dissonance. They simply rebooted to factory settings, rejected the new information entirely, and reasserted the original programming with even more conviction. The researchers were stunned. They'd expected some level of compliance, sure, but this was different. This was active resistance to new data. When confronted with proof that their beliefs were incorrect, subjects didn't update. They doubled down. They attacked the messenger. They questioned the methodology. They changed the subject. Anything but actually processing the information. The study was classified under social optimization research and never replicated publicly. Make of that what you will. But the Tibetan Buddhists knew this 1,200 years earlier. The Bardo Thodol, what Westerners mistranslate as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, describes 6 realms of existence, and one of them is dedicated entirely to this phenomenon, the realm of the pretas, the hungry ghosts. Beings with insatiable hunger, but no digestive capacity. Mouths the size of needles, and stomachs the size of mountains. They consume, but never metabolize. They witness, but never perceive. They experience, but never transform. It's a perfect metaphor for what we're seeing. People consuming infinite information, but processing none of it. Witnessing countless perspectives, but integrating nothing. Experiencing cognitive dissonance daily, but never allowing it to change them. The first sign isn't obvious. It's not that people seem robotic. Plenty of dormant players are charismatic, funny, emotionally expressive. It's that they resist anything that would require them to rewrite their source code. You'll notice they have remarkably detailed opinions about things they've never researched. They'll tell you exactly what's wrong with capitalism, but they've never read Marx or Hayek. They'll explain why a certain political figure is dangerous, but they've never watched an unedited speech or read a primary source. They'll defend scientific positions they haven't examined, repeat historical narratives they've never verified, advocate for policies whose actual text they've never read. When you probe deeper, not aggressively, just curiously, asking where the information came from, you'll see something flicker. A momentary confusion, like a computer process being interrupted. They'll pause. Their eyes will shift. And then the system reboots. They'll change the subject entirely, or get defensive, or repeat the initial claim with more emotional intensity to compensate for the lack of evidentiary depth. Everyone knows that. It's just common sense. I don't need to read the study to know what it says. This isn't stupidity. Let's be absolutely clear about that. The average human brain is capable of extraordinary complexity, nuance, and intellectual sophistication. This is something else. This is protection. A defense mechanism. Protection from what? From the one thing the simulation can't afford. Players who realize they've been playing someone else's game. In 1961, Yale psychologist Stanley Milgram demonstrated that 65% of people would administer what they believed were lethal electric shocks to strangers, simply because an authority figure told them to. The study gets cited constantly, but people miss the point. It's not about obedience to authority, it's about the abdication of personal moral processing. When you hand your decision-making to an external source, you don't become evil, you become absent. The authority isn't forcing you. You're relieved someone else is choosing. That's the first sign. Not that they're stupid or robotic, but that they're relieved to not have to think for themselves. And they'll defend that relief ferociously. Here's how it actually works. And I need you to stay with me, because this gets technical before it gets mystical, and both layers matter. Your brain operates on roughly 11 million bits of information per second. That's the total sensory input, visual data, auditory information, tactile sensation, proprioception, all of it. But your conscious awareness processes only 40 to 50 bits per second. Think about that ratio for a moment. You're consciously experiencing 0.0004% of available reality. The rest is filtered, compressed, deleted by something called the reticular activating system, essentially your brain's spam filter, deciding what's relevant and what gets ignored. Now imagine if that filter could be programmed, not by you, by someone else, by something else. The Institute of Heart Math discovered in 1991 that the human heart generates an electromagnetic field detectable up to 15 feet away. We're not talking metaphor or poetry. This is measurable with standard magnetometers. More critically, their research showed that hearts synchronize with dominant frequency sources in the environment. When multiple people are in the same room, their heart rhythms begin to entrain to the strongest signal, usually the most emotionally coherent person, but not always. Sometimes, just the loudest. Now extend that principle. Television broadcasts operate at specific frequencies, 60 Hz flicker rate in North America, designed to match the low beta brainwave state associated with suggestible passive reception. Wi-Fi routers emit constant carrier waves at 2.4 GHz or 5 GHz, pulsing hundreds of times per second. Cell towers, smart meters, Bluetooth devices. The ambient electromagnetic environment you swim through every day isn't neutral. It's tuning your filter. It's programming what you pay attention to and what you ignore. Ancient Hermetic texts describe this as the sphere of fate, the layer of reality where souls get trapped in mechanical repetition, unable to access higher consciousness because they're locked into material frequency patterns. Medieval grimoires gave specific instructions for sealing the heart against external thought forms. They weren't being superstitious. They understood something we've forgotten. Consciousness is suggestible at the electromagnetic level. The second and third signs appear together, and once you see them, you'll notice them everywhere. People surrounded by dormant consciousness will demonstrate what linguists call scripted speech patterns. They use the same phrases, cadences, and emotional inflections as their primary media diet. It's not subtle. Watch closely during your next conversation. You'll hear entire exchanges that are just remixed sound bites from podcasts, news anchors, and social media influencers. They're not thinking thoughts. They're playing thought recordings. Let's unpack that. That's problematic. I'm here for it. It's giving. These aren't organic expressions. They're linguistic viruses, spreading person to person, converting original speech into mimicry. And the person speaking has no idea. They genuinely believe these are their words, their reactions, their personality. Test this. Mention something outside the approved narrative. Doesn't matter which narrative, left or right, spiritual or skeptical, just something off script. Watch what happens. The third sign reveals itself immediately. Strong emotional reactions to ideas they've never personally encountered. The emotion arrives before comprehension. Fear, anger, mockery, disgust. You'll see it in their face before they've even processed what you said. These are defensive protocols activating to protect the program. The reticular activating system, already tuned to filter out certain frequencies, now encounters a signal it's been programmed to reject. It doesn't evaluate, it doesn't analyze, it attacks. And the person experiencing this reaction genuinely believes it's their authentic emotional response, not recognizing they're running software written by someone else. The fourth sign is more subtle, but it's the most revealing. Watch what happens when you ask someone to defend a position they've stated with certainty. Not argue, just explain. That's interesting. Can you walk me through how you came to that conclusion? If they're a player, even a dormant one starting to wake up, they'll engage. They'll trace their reasoning, acknowledge gaps, maybe even question themselves. But if they're deep in the script, they'll short-circuit. They'll accuse you of sealioning, of asking in bad faith, of trying to trick them. Because the position isn't theirs. It's borrowed. And somewhere beneath conscious awareness, they know it. Her name was Elena. 34 years old, marketing executive in Denver, successful by every conventional metric. She described the moment like suddenly noticing you've been reading off a teleprompter for years. without realizing the words weren't yours. The awakening didn't happen during meditation or ayahuasca or any of the usual catalysts. It happened during a Tuesday afternoon work meeting. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, her third coffee going cold in a corporate-branded mug. She was giving a presentation on consumer engagement strategies, 40 minutes of slides, data visualizations, demographic breakdowns. Mid-sentence, she heard herself. Actually heard the words coming out of her mouth, as if she were standing outside her body. We need to synergize our vertical integration to ensure optimal stakeholder value delivery across all touchpoints. She stopped. The room stared. And in that silence, she heard something else. The ambient hum of the fluorescent lights, the fax system's white noise, the electrical buzz from everyone's laptops and phones, all of it vibrating at the same low frequency, all of it suddenly, horrifyingly present. "Sorry," she said. "Can someone tell me what I just said?" Confused laughter. A colleague repeated it back. "Right," Elena said slowly. "And what does that mean? Specifically, what am I actually proposing we do?" More confusion. Someone attempted a clarification that was just another string of corporate jargon. Elena felt something crack open, or maybe crack closed. She couldn't tell which. Later, after the meeting dissolved into awkward subject changes, she started testing people. She'd drop into conversations and say something completely absurd, but in the right tone. With the right confident body language, we need to leverage the paradigm shift to monetize the disruption cascade. Heads nodded. Thoughtful expressions. "That's a really good point," someone said. Elena leaned forward. "Actually, I just made that up. That sentence meant absolutely nothing. I arranged business buzzwords randomly." Confusion flickered across their faces. Then, laughter. The kind that's not quite genuine, more like a social release valve. Then, inevitably, a quick subject change. Nobody wanted to sit in the discomfort of recognizing they'd agreed with nonsense. The fifth sign revealed itself through Elena's experiments. People avoid silence like biological contamination. She started timing it. In any conversation, if she remained quiet for more than 8 seconds, just breathing, just present, just waiting, the other person would fill the void with anything. Non sequiturs, repeated statements, physical fidgeting, pulling out their phone. Silence, she realized, is where the script breaks down. It's where you're forced to generate original thought instead of playing pre-recorded responses. It's where you have to be present with another human being without the buffer of content. Try it yourself, right now. Not later, right now. Sit in complete silence. No music, no podcast, no video essay in the background. Just you and the ambient sound of wherever you are. 5 full minutes. Just breathe and notice your thoughts without narrating them, without making them mean something, without constructing a story about what this exercise reveals about you. If you can do this without reaching for your phone within 90 seconds, without generating a mental to-do list, without internal narrative commentary about how you're doing at sitting in silence, you're rarer than you think. Elena couldn't do it at first. She made it 34 seconds before her hand moved toward her pocket. That's when she realized how deep the programming went. The sixth sign emerged from her newfound attention. People in dormant mode have remarkably narrow curiosity. They're not interested in things. They're interested in their opinion about things. She tested this relentlessly. She'd mention a subject she knew the other person knew nothing about. Byzantine architecture, quantum field theory, mycology, anything obscure. And she'd watch where their attention went. Did they ask questions? Express wonder? Lean into not knowing with the kind of childlike fascination that makes learning possible? Or did they immediately generate a position, a judgment, a comparison to something they already believed. Oh, that's kind of like, yeah, I've heard about that, it's basically interesting. But I think every response revealed the same pattern. The need to already know, to already have an opinion, to never exist in the vulnerable space of genuine ignorance. Elena told me she mourned for 6 months. Not for other people, for herself. For all the years she'd been running someone else's software without knowing it. For every conversation she'd simulated instead of having. For every thought she'd borrowed instead of generating. For every moment she'd been absent from her own life. But here's where the map shifts, where the territory transforms from diagnosis to treatment. Those 7 signs aren't marking NPCs. They're marking players who've been running someone else's software. And software can be rewritten. The brain isn't hardware, it's firmware. Programmable, adaptable, responsive to new input until the moment you die. Neuroscience finally caught up to what Vedic texts explained 5,000 years ago. The brain is neuroplastic throughout your entire lifespan. Consciousness isn't a fixed state you're born with. It's a skill you practice, or a skill you neglect. Dr. Richard Davidson's research at the University of Wisconsin's Center for Healthy Minds proved this definitively. They scanned the brains of Olympic-level meditators, monks with over 10,000 hours of practice, and found something remarkable. These individuals showed gamma-wave synchronization across all brain regions simultaneously. Not sequentially, not in isolated areas, everywhere at once. Translation: their consciousness was integrating information that normal waking awareness fragments and discards. They were processing more of those 11 million bits per second. They'd upgraded the filter, expanded the bandwidth, reclaimed processing power that most people never access. And here's the crucial part. The neuroscientists could measure this developing in real time with beginners. 8 weeks of meditation practice produced measurable changes in gray matter density in regions associated with self-awareness, compassion, and introspection. Consciousness isn't mystical in the sense of being unmeasurable. It's mystical in the sense of being profound. The ancient Stoics understood this. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, who spent his evenings writing private philosophical journals, noted, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." He wasn't being poetic. He was describing the mechanism of consciousness expansion. Discomfort isn't a sign you're wrong. It's a sign you're growing. The edge of your understanding is exactly where understanding expands. Modern players who remember their players share something distinct, something you can identify instantly once you know what to look for. They collect experiences that contradict their worldview. Actively, deliberately. They seek out information that challenges their beliefs, not to be contrarian or to play devil's advocate, but because they understand that consciousness expands at the edges, never at the center. You don't wake up by reinforcing what you already think. You don't grow by consuming content that confirms your existing biases. You wake up by touching what you've been avoiding, by sitting with what makes you uncomfortable, by staying present with cognitive dissonance long enough to let it transform you, instead of dismissing it to protect your current operating system. The 6th sign appears here as invitation rather than diagnosis. Notice who's curious about their own consciousness, who's questioning their own reactions, examining their own programming, testing their own beliefs against reality, instead of defending them against reality. Those are the players remembering how to play. Elena told me something profound 6 months into her awakening. I used to think consciousness was like a light switch. You're either awake or you're asleep. Now I understand it's more like a dimmer, and most of us are running at about 15% brightness, convinced we're seeing clearly, because we've never experienced what 100% looks like. She'd started practicing what she called conscious interrupts, deliberately breaking her own patterns to test if they were choices or compulsions. When she reached for her phone, she'd pause and ask, "Am I choosing this? Or is this choosing me?" When she felt a strong reaction to something, she'd pause and ask, "Is this my emotion? Or is this a programmed response?" When she caught herself repeating a phrase she'd heard elsewhere, she'd stop and ask, "Are these my words, or am I channeling someone else's script?" The results were unsettling. She discovered that roughly 80% of what she'd considered her personality was actually borrowed behaviors, adopted speech patterns, and simulated emotions. But in the 20% that remained, in the genuine, original, unscripted responses, she found something she'd been missing her entire life: herself. The actual player underneath all the programming. Remember the hook? The question we opened with 30 minutes ago. You're not surrounded by NPCs. You're surrounded by players who forgot the controller was in their hands. And the difference is everything. Because an NPC can't wake up. That's definitional. An NPC is code running on a server, simulation filling space, scenery making the world feel populated. But a dormant player? They're one recognition away from remembering. One pattern interrupt away from questioning the script. One moment of genuine silence away from hearing their own thoughts instead of the recorded ones. And here's the twist you've been waiting for, the reveal that recontextualizes everything we've discussed. The seventh sign isn't about them. It's about you. The seventh sign is that you're watching this right now. That you've been here for 30 minutes, processing these patterns, recognizing these frequencies, resonating with this information in a way that feels less like learning and more like remembering. The simulation doesn't need everyone awake. That's not how complex systems work. It needs distributed consciousness. It needs players at various levels maintaining different aspects of the game's possibility space. It needs some people focused on material reality, building infrastructure, maintaining systems, creating stability. And it needs other people, maybe you, questioning those systems, exploring their boundaries, testing their limits, demonstrating that the script is optional. You've been categorizing people this entire video: player or dormant, awake or asleep, questioning or repeating. But have you categorized yourself? Have you tested your own responses against the 7 signs? Because here's what nobody wants to admit. We all exist on the spectrum. There are areas of your life where you're fully conscious, making genuine choices, questioning your programming. And there are areas where you're running scripts you've never examined. The Gnostics had a word for this moment. This recognition, metanoia. It gets mistranslated as repentance in Christian texts, which completely misses the meaning. Metanoia means fundamental transformation of consciousness, a seeing through of the veil while still standing in the game. Not escape, not transcendence in the sense of leaving, but transcendence in the sense of seeing clearly for the first time, while remaining embodied, engaged, playing. You're not here to save the dormant players. That's ego. That's spiritual materialism. That's just another script promising you significance if you'll recruit others into your new belief system. You're here to remember how to play, to reclaim agency, to rewrite the parts of your operating system that you've been running unexamined since childhood. The daily practice isn't complicated, but it's not comfortable. 3 commitments. 3 conscious interrupts. Every single day until it becomes natural. And then you keep doing it, because consciousness isn't a destination, it's a practice. First, question 1, automatic thought. Catch yourself mid-script and ask, where did I learn to think this? Who taught me this belief? Have I tested it? Or have I just accepted it? It doesn't matter if the thought is right or wrong. What matters is whether it's yours, whether you've consciously chosen it or just inherited it. Second, notice one moment of silence. Let it be uncomfortable. Let it reveal what's underneath the noise. Sit with the discomfort of not consuming, not producing, not performing, just being, just breathing, just present with the raw, unfiltered experience of existing. The scripts can't run in silence. The programming requires constant input. Deny it that input, even for 5 minutes, and watch what surfaces. Third, choose one original action. Not rebellious. Rebellion is still reactive, still defined by what you're rebelling against. Original. Something no algorithm predicted, no habit loop programmed, no social conditioning scripted. Something that emerges from that silent space where you met yourself. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It just has to be yours. And here's your mantra, the transmission that completes the circuit, the frequency that overwrites the default programming. Say this every morning when you wake up, before you reach for your phone, before you check your notifications, before you load someone else's agenda into your consciousness. I am the player who remembers. I question what I've been taught to repeat. I choose what the script said was chosen for me. 3 sentences. Present tense. Active voice. Not aspirational, declarative. Not I will be or I want to be. I am. Because you're not becoming a conscious player. You're remembering that you always were one. You just forgot. And forgetting doesn't erase what's true. It just obscures it temporarily. The dormant players around you aren't enemies. They're not obstacles. They're mirrors, showing you which parts of yourself you've allowed to go dormant. Every scripted conversation is an opportunity to stay present. Every emotional reaction you witness is a chance to examine your own triggers. Every person running someone else's software is a reminder to check which programs you're running without conscious permission. This isn't the end of the journey. It's the end of one chapter and the beginning of the actual game. The game where you play as yourself instead of as the character you were assigned. Where you question the missions instead of just completing them. Where you explore the boundaries of the map instead of staying in the safe zones. The simulation needs players who remember. It needs you awake. Not to escape it, not to transcend it, not to save anyone else from it, but to play it consciously. To choose your role instead of accepting the default. To demonstrate through your lived experience that consciousness is a choice available to everyone, anytime they're willing to wake up to it. You're not surrounded by NPCs. You're surrounded by players who forgot they were playing. And the most important question isn't whether they'll remember. It's whether you will.